Have you ever died in a dream? Perhaps you started falling and woke up right at the moment of impact. Perhaps you were in the ocean and couldn't hold your breath any longer, but instead of drowning, you could suddenly breathe underwater. Perhaps you had a nightmare and a scary monster was chasing you, but woke up the moment it caught you. But have you ever died and kept dreaming of being dead? Because it happened to me. It was a dream about an upcoming surgery, and I had to undergo general anesthesia. But in the dream, I suppose something went wrong along the way. I could feel the cold stainless steel of the operating table beneath me, the nerves sending butterflies to my stomach, and the embarrassingly breathy surgery gowns that barely covered anything. I could feel the needle in my arm, hear beeping around me, and the surgeon and other staff preparing all tools. The anesthesiologist put a mask over my face and told me to take a couple of deep breaths. 1, and breathe out. 2, and breathe out. 3, and complete darkness. All sounds have ceased, and I was trapped in complete silence, surrounded by what I could no longer describe as darkness, but more like nothingness. All feelings of my surroundings were cut off, and my brain started to feel all weird and mushy, my awareness slowly drifting away. And then nothing. It felt like forever and like one quick second all at once. Not a single thought present in my mind. No feeling of time passing, but also no fear, no confusion or any other emotion, because I no longer existed. I wasn't helplessly trapped in this experience because what I was experiencing was nothing. The feeling of not existing, how nothing looks like and how the brain thinks about it. Or doesn't think about it. It's hard to describe, but I was not present in the moment, nor in the past or the future. I didn't think about anything, nor could I think at all. My inner voice completely silent and all my senses erased, so my brain had no input of any information from anywhere. It was the kind of nothingness that our brains aren't designed to comprehend. The type of feeling or lack thereof that cannot be replicated or imagined, because by simply trying to imagine it, we already break the first rule of not being able to imagine anything. The closest thing to this experience is being exhausted to the point where one falls asleep the moment they hit the pillow and then pass out into a sleep so deep that the entire night feels like 1 minute went by, but the mind was completely shut down in the meantime, all awareness gone. That's what it felt like after I woke up from this bizarre dream. The part before the surgery felt like time was passing normally, and the rest felt like 1 minute and eternity all at once. The complete lack of awareness and existence of any thoughts in my mind felt both creepy and fascinatingly disgusting to me. It took me a while to get myself together after such a weird dream, and I remember my first thought being, is that what it feels like to be dead? So I just watched Mr. Nightmare's video of driving horror stories, and I want to share mine. So when I was younger, my mom, my brother, and I used to live in Mexico. We lived in the middle of nowhere in a little town called Paula. My mom had a giant black truck that you had to climb into. Her truck barely fit in any of the dirt roads or town roads. On this particular night, my brother forgot to put away a giant bag of dog food in the back seat. And the whole day my mom was giving him shit about it. It was raining and storming. There were no lights on this road, so the only light there was is the truck. We were driving down a dirt road and she was drunk driving. She started to give my brother shit again about the dog food that I was sitting next to. Then, all of a sudden, the truck stopped. Every time we move, the truck will be rocking back and forth. My mom told my brother to look out of his window to see what was out there. Of course, he can't see anything, so she gave him a flashlight. He freaked out and screamed, "We're on a fucking cliff." It was a 10-foot drop to train tracks. The truck was perfectly balanced, and my mom was in her drunken stupor. She opened her door and got out first. She told my brother to climb over and get out while she holds the door open. When he got out, it was my turn. I was sitting behind my brother, and I have a giant bag of dog food blocking my way. She opened the door and told me to climb. I felt like I was going to shit a brick because every time I moved the truck slightly moved too. I remember her grabbing my arm and yanking me out. She tried to call her boyfriend and he didn't pick up, so we ended up walking in the rain for 2 hours going home. Surprisingly, though, the hero of the story is the bag of dog food. Because of its weight of it, it was balancing the whole truck. The next morning, farmers pulled the truck off of the ledge using a tractor. I get weird dreams every now and then, the kind that seems like I've entered an altered reality. I walk around familiar places, yet something feels off. Buildings on streets where they shouldn't be, houses missing, corridors that shouldn't exist, several flights of stairs that lead to nowhere but just keep going up. The hidden attic that appeared in my dreams several times by now was no different. For some context, I dream about my old primary school on occasion, and one time I went to the library on the ground floor in my dream. The school has otherwise 2 more floors above the library, and it's a very old brick building with stairs made of stone that's been used up to the point where you can slide down like you're skateboarding if you angle your feet just right and wear slippers. The library was a bit more modern, however, with carpet flooring and a white ceiling. It was also the only place accessible to students that had an AC, so the air was nice and cool during the hot days. The first time I dreamt about the attic, I learned that in the middle of the reading room, there was a panel on the ceiling that looked like a giant tile. It was quite unnoticeable until you knew what to look for. It was the entrance to the attic, which made no sense because the library wasn't even on the top floor. The entrance had no ladder or stairs, so you had to take one of the library desks, put it under the door and step on top of it, then unhinge the entrance and pull yourself up and climb into the attic. It was a dusty and dark place, lined with dark brown stained wood. It was giant and went across the entire layout of the school, similar to a maze. The top of the space was quite low, however, so you couldn't stand upright. Instead, you had to crawl on all fours to get around. The walls on the edges tapered in as if they were a part of a pointy roof of a house, which made no sense since the school was a cube of bricks with a flat roof. I explored the hidden attic several times in my dreams, sometimes alone, sometimes accompanied by friends. Whenever I dreamt of the school again, I'd remember the attic, and it was a well-known fact in the dream world that this attic existed, and everyone seemed unpassed at the mention of it. I could go back to it and explore it by free will whenever I happened to be at the school in my dreams, but my common sense told me that there is no way that this attic could ever exist in the real world. So I kind of brushed it off and forgot about it by morning, only remembering it whenever I was in that continuous dream once again. Years went by and I went to high school, but I still had the same dream on occasion, only that this time I wouldn't forget it after waking up because I kept a dream journal. I visited my old primary school once in the second year of high school, and it was also the last time I went there. I went to greet the old teachers and the principal, but just out of curiosity, I stopped by the library as well. The feeling was pleasant and nostalgic right until I entered the reading room, and that's when my stomach dropped. Same old gray carpet and plain white walls, the same warm-toned wooden bookshelves, the same glossy white single desks on green metal legs with little drawers for notebooks and hangers for backpacks, the paint chipping off at the edges. In the very center of the space was a desk that seemed out of place compared to the placement of others. I nervously looked up to the ceiling right above the reading desk, and there it was. A white panel with a barely visible hinge on the edge. Edit. This is based on my actual experiences. Edit 2. Fixed some spacing issues. This happened back in 2016. Only now do I think it's time to tell this. I was visiting family in Donauheim. I left the family home at around midnight. Then I intended to hop in at Interstate 70 and go home. But by the time I left the house, it was too late to leave. So therefore, I decided to stay at a hotel. It had fairly negative reviews, but I didn't want to stay at a motel. I entered the hotel. It's all run down, but still polished. As I approached the counter, which reeked of rotten potatoes, I was greeted by a woman. "Greetings. Welcome to Hotel Felicia. Would you like to rent a room?" She was spindly. She looked human, sure, but she was stretched, and her arms stretched far through human limit. I was a bit frightened as she smiled ear to ear. She towered over me, but I responded, yeah, have a room please." She smiled more as she brought her long and spindly arms to the register. I pulled out my wallet and slid some money across the table. "Thank for staying at Felicia Hotel. Your room is 124. Enjoy your stay," she said. She brought her arms to her pockets as she brought out a key card and pointed her hand towards the stairs. I took the key card and rushed up the stairs to my room. The creaking door into the hallway was awfully eerie. I entered the hallway. The lights flickered as I progressed further down the hallway. The lights flickered. But when it turned back on, I was staring at something. It was a lumped-on pile of meat. The head was separated into a wolf's head and a human's. Among the countless eyes, heads, mouths, and arms, the main mouth spoke in a graveled, shrived, and broken voice, "Where eyes room 124. I was stuck in shock. I felt the time stop for a moment as my heart skipped a beat. Then time suddenly resynced as the monster rushed forward. I fell back on the floor as it screeched and raised a razor-like arm. I backed up on the ground as I pulled myself up and ran for the door. The thing was surprisingly fast as what was that? Oh no, shit. This is no longer a story. This is a piece of evidence. My name is Alexander Harvey. In 2016, February 12, I experienced supernatural events. The monster described above is still stalking me. If you see it, run. It's too late for me, but not for you. Goodbye. Can you smell that? Max asks me. It smells like wet leaves, sweet but a little rotten. It just rained, so the smell is hanging around and the air feels thick. It's my favorite smell. After exhaling a lungful of it, I say, ash, the sweet smell of fall. It's the time of year where the rain turns to sleet, and that eventually turns into snow. I live in the Pacific Northwest in this little town that's not a whole lot more than a few grocery stores and a highway. And yet somehow there are more dispensaries than places to eat. I'm walking to my house with Max. I live nearby his work, so sometimes I go meet him there when he gets off and we go back to hang out at my place. Max and I have been friends since we were in 8th grade. He was born here, but I came all the way from Arizona when I was 14. No, my last name isn't Swan, and no, my dad is not a cop. I know what you're thinking. Anyway, I met Max pretty soon after I moved here in my homeroom, and we pretty much instantly clicked. So, I know you just got off work, but I was wondering if you could do some runs with me before we totally kick back tonight. It shouldn't take more than an hour or two. I ask him this even though I know he's always down to do whatever. Max is the king of just being along for the ride. "Yeah, man," he says, "you know I'm off for the next 2 days, so let's party." I laugh. I didn't realize asking someone to ride around on wellness checks was equivalent to partying. About 10 minutes later, we approach the gate to my house. Jogging up the front steps, I say, "I'm just going to run in and grab my wallet. I'll meet you at the car." Max's eyes get huge. "Dude, you walk without your wallet. How would they identify your body?" I yell through the screen door. "You watch too much true crime, Max. It's only the late afternoon, but it's late November, so it's already getting dark. I don't really have a set schedule. I work for a private company that you can call to check on your family or friends, usually if they are people who live alone and struggle to take care of themselves, or just a friend they haven't been able to contact for a while. We aren't police, though, so really all we can do is attempt to make contact and leave a letter for the resident if they don't come to the door. This is my 3rd week on the job. Before this, I worked as a private detective. And I'll be honest, I just got tired of people asking me if that was my real job. So I decided to pursue a different avenue of the same line of work. A more confrontational side. but I'm on call this weekend, and every weekend because I need the money. So, who's the first one on the list? Max asks me, slapping my shoulder. I love taking Max on runs because he makes them way more entertaining than when I do it alone. This guy named Reggie, his friend hasn't heard from him in a few days, and I guess Reggie is diabetic, so he just wants to see if someone can make contact with him to make sure he has his medicine. Max ponders this for a moment. Why don't they just call the police then? Isn't a wellness check usually what they do? Asterisk sigh asterisk I don't know. Some people don't trust the police because they've been wronged in the past, and they think we'll be a safer option. I also think it might sometimes be because the person they want us to check up on might have some questionable life choices going on that they maybe don't want the police stumbling on. Max nods. I get that. But what if you see something like super illegal? Do they think you won't report that? Well, part of the discussion prior is I'm not going out of my way to find anything, but if the guy has someone tied up in the living room behind him when he answers the door, that's going to be different. We both laugh at this ridiculous mental image. Reggie lives out of town, about 30 miles in the opposite direction of any city life. The majority of people I check up on live in rural areas where their friends or family struggle to find time to go or transportation to get there. Hey, Max, can you hook up to the Bluetooth? My phone battery is super low. I say this with hesitancy because I know he is about to light me up for not charging my phone before heading out. He thinks I'm insane. We listen to his favorite podcast, a storytelling podcast that tells stories that chill you to the bone. As we turn onto the dirt road that should lead to Reggie's house, the narrator says, he was the most obvious suspect due to huge gashes on his face, which appeared to be defensive wounds, likely those of Cassandra. Jesus, Max, can't we ever listen to something funny? Max rolls his eyes at me, but he laughs and says even he could stand to take a break from all the doom and gloom. We pull up to Reggie's house. At least, from the description, I'm pretty sure this is the one. There were a few other houses on the road that looked similar, but the client said Reggie's had an old Coke sign on the mailbox, and sure enough, this one had that. The house was a small log cabin, no windows to indicate any lights on inside, but there was a porch light on. I told Max to stay in the car, and I walked up to the house. Sometimes I wonder how safe it is, even telling him to stay in the car. But I push that thought out and raise my hand to knock on the door. As my knuckles make contact, I get chills. Something feels weird, and not just because of where we're at. I've done private detective work for long enough to be able to pick up on bad energy without seeing the evil in front of me. I knock several times, yelling Reggie's name and asking him to come outside. I tell him I'm there on behalf of his friend Eric, and we just want to make sure he's okay. After several minutes of knocking, I decide this one isn't coming to the door, and I leave the letter. I turn back towards my car and chills go down my spine, so electrifying I swear I'm going to combust. Max's door is open, but Max is not in the car. I yell his name as I sprint to the car. I left the car running, but when I approach it, it's off and my keys aren't in the ignition. Shit, I hiss. Shit. Max. I pull out my phone and I try to call Max, but he doesn't answer. I decide to run back up to the house and bang on the door, but I realize the porch light is off now. This makes me feel like I'm being watched and that whoever is watching me doesn't want to be seen. I should have already called the police by now. I dial 911, but I hear the line drop after 2 seconds as my phone finally dies. This can't be happening. Where the hell is Max? What happened? I was up there for 10 minutes. I dropped to the ground sobbing, but then I'm startled by the feeling of someone grabbing my shoulder and shaking me. It's Max. Dude, wake up. You're kicking me. I look around. We're at my house, not Reggie's. In fact, we're in my living room and the TV is on YouTube, playing one of Max's Eerie Stories channels. I'm drenched in sweat, and Max asks me, "Don't you need to go to work soon?" Want me to come on the runs with you? I say no, probably a little too aggressively because he looks hurt. No, sorry, I just had a terrible dream. We went on a run together, and at the first house we went to I was at the door for 10 minutes, and when I came back to the car you were gone. Anyway, I haven't gotten any calls yet. No sooner do I finish this sentence before Dan from work pops up on my phone. I answer the call and warn him I just woke up. Hey George, I know it's late, but this call just came through and you're the only one willing to work this weekend. Client says he hasn't heard from his friend Reggie in a while, and he's diabetic, so he just wants to make sure he's okay. Says it's a ways out. You can't miss his house. Got a Coke sign on the mailbox. It's out in Denning, about 30-40 miles. You want to check it out? My blood runs cold. I clear my throat and try to compose myself. There's no way he'll believe me if I tell him about the dream I just had. Actually, Dan, I came down with something nasty and I think I'm going to have to stay home. I hang up. Max can tell I'm visibly opposite, but he doesn't press it. He pulls up my favorite comedian's newest stand-up and asks me if I want something to drink. Water. I finally choke out. Hey Max, is your job hiring? I'm feeling a little paranoid in this new gig. Max laughs the hardest he's laughed in months and through tears says, dude, and you say I watch too much true crime.